today's webinar on the TIMS system. I'm Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'm very pleased to have with me my colleague who will be presenting for you. It's Stephen Hale. And before I turn things over to him, I'm just going to do a couple quick housekeeping items. First off, we are attempting to record the presentation, and if that's successful, we'll send you a link to it once we've got it posted to our YouTube page and have confirmed that the transcription is correct. So that should probably happen within a couple of days. The other thing is we do have a questions box, and we would ask that you put any questions that you have for the presenter in that question box. We'll be monitoring it and making sure that those questions get asked of the presenter either during the presentation or at the end. So please make sure you put your questions in the question box. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else that I need housekeeping wise. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over. You ready, Stephen?
Yep. Thanks, Victoria.
Thanks.
You guys hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes, they're giving thumbs up, so we're good.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. This is our July webinar for TIMS. Today we're going to talk about the TIMS application. I'm going to show you a demo. Feel free to follow along, but I may be going a little quick to follow along fully. And I do want to note that we will be doing webinars every other month starting now. So we'll have another one in September. And then we do have some in-person trainings that I'll show you how to find in just a minute. So this is our TIMS application. And if you are new to TIMS, there's a couple different ways that you can get to it. From the ODOT website, you could search TIMS. And it'll bring you to a link to our TIMS application. You can also just use trusty old Google and search ODOT TIMS, and it should be one of those first links. But I would recommend, if you're not familiar, just familiarize yourself with the URL and bookmark it, and that's how you get to TIMS. So we're going to touch a little bit on every component of TIMS, but I do want to highlight some of the new features. So we went live with this new version of TIMS in March of 2025, and we've since done some minor enhancements based off of feedback from that initial deployment. So as we go through the training today, I'll do my best to highlight some of those new features in case you haven't been in the system in a while. So here on the TIMS homepage, you can find links to the various pages. There is also a TIMS icon at the top that will always bring you back to this homepage. And then on the right-hand side, there is an information and support page. So this is a good resource where you can find information like user guides, some quick hit videos to show you how to do certain functionality in TIMS, training resources. So as I mentioned, we do have a webinar that you are in right now. We will also be posting recordings of all our webinars here, but we do have some in-person trainings that are a little slower paced and more interactive. So if you are near one of these trainings and you want to join us, feel free to click the link here in the info and support page and sign up for one of those in-person trainings. Also down here towards the bottom, there's a contact link that will send an email to myself. And I should have mentioned Katy Lewis, who is also on this webinar today. It'll send an email to us and we will get back to you with any questions, concerns, or feedback. So back to the homepage, we also have this notification icon, which is new in this version of TIMS too. If you go to TIMS for the first time, you'll see these notifications pop up as just drop downs, and then you can close out of them accordingly. But if you do close out of them, they won't show up again the next time you come into TIMS. So you can always access those over here by clicking the notification icon. We also have a relatively new search feature that we've released in the last couple months. This is just a simple search that you can type in keywords and find links to maps or various data sets that we have in TIMS. So the way this works is you can just start typing, and it'll bring you to the search results, which will give you either links to the data page, links to the layer and create a map, or some of our map viewers if we have that data available in the map viewers. And then you can just click on that icon and it'll bring you to the appropriate page. So in this case, it's going to take me to create a map and it's going to turn on that layer for me. If I click on the data link, it will take me to the data page. So I will go over both of those pages in a minute. This link is quite basic right now. It's searching text and item tags that we have. We do hope to, in the coming years, make this a little more advanced and add some additional features to the search. But right now, this is kind of our jumping off point with the search. To get out of the search, you can just click the X here, and that'll bring you back to the home page. So I'm going to jump into our first page today, which is the project search page. So the project search page is a repository of ODOT's transportation project database, which some of you might know as ELLIS. So this is not pulling the data from this database directly. Rather, we are getting snapshots of that data on a nightly basis. So if you are a user of ELLIS and you are in there interacting with projects, if you code a project today, it should show up in TIMS tomorrow. There are a couple caveats. The information that we pull from this system has to meet one of these funding criterias. So ELLIS multi-lane, major rehab, STIP, major bridge, safety, local programs, and track. It has to have dates tied to it. So it could be completed project, current project, or a future project. Has to have committed funding. And to view it in the map, it needs to have a valid work location. So this table initially is showing all of the project locations that we are getting from our ELLIS system. You might notice that we have multiple records for individual project IDs or PIDs. What this is showing is all the unique work locations for that PID. So if you wanted to just navigate this table and endlessly scroll, you can do so. But we also have some filters over here on the left-hand side that will help you narrow down your search. So you can search by a primary work category. You can add a year filter. So if I wanted to say, show me all of the projects from fiscal year 25 to say 28, you can see that this table is filtering real time. So we started with 90,000 records and it's down to 13,000 already. So you can also choose location information to help further refine your search. So I could choose a district. I can choose a county. I'll give it a second to load. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. I'm not sure why that table was empty. Of course, the perils of a live demo. All right. Well, Katy, if you were on the call, could you look into that error? But it doesn't look like the filters are working right this second. I apologize. There we go. So let's try that again. Not sure what that was, but I filtered now for District 6, Franklin County. And you can see that these filters are kind of dynamically restricting the results in the table. You can also add a route to your search. So if you are interested in just all the projects on a single route or multiple routes, you can choose a route. So right now in TIMS, you need to actually know what the route ID is. We have an enhancement in place that should be deployed sometime in the next month that will show you a nice looking route name instead of the route ID. But if I wanted to choose, let's say Interstate 70, I can choose the begin and the end milepost values. Let's say 10 to 20. And I can add that, and then that's going to further restrict my results. So within this, this table here, if I wanted to get quick information about a project, I can click on this View Details link. And that will take me to the project information page. Boy, things are being slow today. Let's go try to refresh that. Well, if this were to load, you would see some information about the project and a couple of links that you could click to get to project plans and a link that you can click to view this data in Ellis, but also view it in Create a Map. I'm not sure why we're having issues with this page today, but.
Hey Steve, can you hit the refresh to reload the page?
Yeah, I tried that.
I saw the same lag, but then it's responding now.
Here we go.
I'll check with the server team on the back end too.
Okay. So this is what the project information page looks like. So it's going to give you some basic information about what that project is, where it's located, some details about the costs associated with that project, and some milestones tied to it, where those funds might come from. If it is on a bridge, it'll give you information about that bridge. And then some additional links down at the bottom that will take you to the Office of Contracts site that you can view project plans. So we also have a couple links up top so you can view in Ellis. Now this is not actually Ellis, this is a public facing view from Ellis, but this will give you more information than we might have in TIMS. And then this view and map will give you a, will take you to create a map page and highlight that one project location on the map. And so now you can turn on some other data and interact with that project location. If you wanted to see multiple projects on your map, you can highlight all of the individual rows and click View and Map. And that will also bring you to create a map. And it should zoom you to that project location. There we go. And you can see all of those work locations on your map. I should have also mentioned we do have this search by PID tool that's available across TIMS. So if you have a project ID that you're interested in, you could always use this search by PID. Click enter and it'll take you to the project search page. And so now I can highlight all of these records and view them in map. So I can view that single PID on the map. So that's the project search page. So I'm going to browse back to the TIMS homepage using the TIMS icon. And from here.
Yeah, I was going to jump in real quick. I know Katie's probably working on the server thing. Two questions that came in.
Yeah.
One person said they can only see projects through fiscal year 24. And the other person wanted to know, how do you know the route numbers?
Yeah, so the route numbers, this will change very shortly when we implement the enhancement that I mentioned, but the route numbers are an intelligent ID. So if you look at the route numbers, the first character is going to be your jurisdiction. So S is for state. If I scroll over, C is for county. Township is typically T. And then municipal is M. And then the 3-digit county code will be the next few characters. So if you were looking for a route in, say, Franklin County, it will be SFRA. And then it's the route type. So for interstate, it's IR. For US, it's US. For state route, it's SR, and so on and so forth. And then you have a 5-character route number. So typically, if I wanted to search for Franklin County Interstate 70, I could type in FRA IR 00070, and I can get that route ID. There is also, which jumping ahead a little bit, but there is also in the data page, if I search for road inventory, I can find the road inventory data definitions. And from here, you can also click on this link, and that'll take you to the road inventory manual. If you want to get more information about what that route ID is and all the various components of it, that can be found here in the road inventory manual. The second question is regarding the fiscal year 2024. I'm not sure if there's an issue with our Ellis data right now, but we are looking into it. But it should have any project that might be a future project. So as long as it has committed funding and dates tied to it, it should show up in our TIMS database. All right, so jumping into create a map now. So create a map is kind of the meat and potatoes of TIMS, I like to say. This is where you can come find all the various data sets that we have, enable them, view them on the map, maybe do some basic analysis. You can export data from here. And we do have some cool new sharing functions that you can do from create a map. So the site itself, so you have a map obviously that you can interact with, very similar to other web maps that you may or may not be familiar with. You can zoom in and out with your mouse wheel, or you can use the buttons here. There is a home button that'll bring you back to the initial extent. And then we do have the option to choose different base maps. So if you prefer like an aerial imagery, you can use the OSIP imagery or one of these other. We do default you to the ODOT base map, but I believe the site will remember what base map you preferred. So whatever base map you were using last, next time you go to TIMS, it should pull up that base map for you. We also have a search bar in the upper right-hand corner. So this searches various things. You can search by address, cities and villages, counties, MPOs, districts, RTPOs, townships, or urban areas. So by default, you're searching everything, but if you wanted to search something specific, you could always choose that. Or you could just search, I'll type Franklin, and it'll give me results for addresses. It'll give me results for cities and villages here, townships. It'll give me the results from all of those different options in my dropdown. So if I wanted to choose a location, let's say I wanted one of these townships, I could just click that and it'll zoom me to that location and highlight that on the map. If I wanted to search for an address, you can just type that address and it will drop a pin on the map and show you some basic information about that location. On the left-hand side, we have some tools that you can interact with. So there is an icon at the top that you can hide the tools or expand them to see the full names. And then obviously we have our layers list here, which is turned on by default. So you can navigate the layers list by clicking and expanding any one of these groupings. We also have a search bar that you can use to search for data sets. So if I wanted to search for the road inventory, I could type that in, click on the layer, and then it's going to highlight that in the map. So if I turn this on, you might not see that data turn on right away. You might be able to tell that the layer name is grayed out in the table of contents. That just means that there's a spatial filter on that data. And once I zoom in a little bit, that layer name will turn bold, and the data will start to show up and populate on my map. So you can turn on one or as many as you want data sets here from the layer list. And as you turn those on, you can see the different data sets pop up. So a relatively new feature in TIMS is the identify feature. So before this rollout in March of last year, you used to have to enable a different tool to just quickly identify a feature. Now you can just click on a feature and see the pop-up for that data set. If you click on a feature that, or a location that might intersect with multiple features, you can have, there's a drop down here that you can choose which feature you are actually seeing the information for. Also, you can toggle at the top to toggle between different records. You might be able to tell that there is a highlight icon here that is showing me which feature I'm actually looking at in my pop-up. So from the pop-up too, you can also link to the metadata page. So this is that data page that I showed you a minute ago for road inventory. All right, so that is the pop-up. There's a couple other tools that I wanted to touch on that interact with the map. So another cool tool that we have is if you right-click anywhere on the map, you will have the option to view the location information for that point. So if I click that location information, it will show me the latitude, longitude, the decimal degrees, or degrees, minutes, seconds. It'll show me an address if I click near an address. It'll also tell me the county, the ODOT district, and then the route information. So there was a question earlier about how do I know the route ID for a project. You could always click on a route within TIMS and get the route ID just by right-clicking and doing location information. Now note that some of this data will not populate if you click on an area that is not near a road. So I can do that and still get some basic information, but I will not have the route ID or the state and county log point. And one note about the state and the county log point, the difference between these two are the county log points reset when the route enters a new county. So coming from Madison County, it will start over at 0. But the state log point is the measurement for the entire route within the state. And this is what will closely match what you see posted out on the mile marker signs. So also in that right-click menu, there are 2 options for view and street web, or view and street view, or view and path web. So the view and street view will take you to Google Maps and give you a street view of that location. And then the view and path web will take you to ODOT's path web system. And we have a van that drives the entire state network on a 2-year cycle. And you can see what's going on in this location. And then lastly, in that right-click menu, there is a report an issue option. So this will bring up your native email client, and it'll send an email to us, but it'll give us some basic information about where you're reporting an issue. It'll give us a link to click that we can see exactly what you were seeing in your map. And then you can provide a little bit of detail about what that issue is that you noticed. Now, please note that this type of report an issue is just for TIMS issues or data issues. We are not expecting emails for reports of, say, potholes or damaged signs or things like that. There are other mechanisms within ODOT to send that feedback. All right, so back in my layers list here, I had some layers turned on, and you might have noticed that I turned off a layer grouping. So if I wanted to quickly turn off all the data that I have, I can just turn off the groupings here. But also within each one of these layers, there is a context menu that will give you some additional features. So you can open the attributes table for any data set that we have and see all of the attributes, all of the records for that data set. I'll go over this in a few minutes. There is another link to the metadata. If you ever have questions about what the data means, you can find that here in the metadata. And then we also have a filter by attributes option. So you can filter any one of these data sets by just clicking add new. You can choose a field that you would like to filter on. So for this, I'll just do county code is, and then let's just choose a county code. So now this data set is filtered from, let's say, the 40,000 records that I had to just show me the records within Franklin County. You'll also notice that once I do apply an attribute filter, I see this filter icon that shows me that this layer is now filtered. So if I needed to update that or change that, I can click on that filter. Oh, it's already popped up. I can click on that filter to show me which filters I have. I can modify that if I need to. Let's say, or county code is Delaware. So now I can view and see that I've modified my filter to include 2 counties. So you can filter multiple tables at a time. There is a clear filters option that'll clear all the filters that you've applied to any layer within TIMS. And one cool new feature that we have in this version of TIMS is the ability to share the filters. So if I was filtering my data and I wanted to share that with a colleague or a consultant or somebody that I'm doing business with, I can click this share icon. And what this will do is this will generate a link. So I can copy that link, or I can share it using my operating system share function or my browser share functions. But if I copy that link, and then let's say I shared that and I pasted in a new browser, that will open up Create a Map, and it'll turn on any layers that I had turned on and automatically apply the same filters. So I can click that filter and I can see exactly what filters are applied here in my share link. Also, one note on the sharing too, if I move my map, or let's say I turn on another layer, I'll turn on the conduit layer here. You'll notice that this is telling me that this link was created at 10:29. It's now 10:30. So it's asking me, did you make changes to your maps? Do you want to generate a new link? So I can just click update link, and now I'll get that new link that will include the changes that I just made to my map. So just a note, if you are using the share function, once you make any changes, you'll have to generate that new link. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my filters now and show you a relatively new feature that we have in TIMS is the ability to filter spatially on multiple data sets at once. So at the top of my layers list, there is a spatial filter option. So previously, we could always filter spatially, but you had to do it layer by layer. Recently, we've added this enhancement that you can now filter all the layers in your map at once. If you don't want to do that, you can choose which layer you want to apply this filter to, or you can just leave it turned on to all visible layers. So the way this tool works is it asks you, do you want to draw a shape or use geometry? So what geometry is you can choose a predefined boundary. So let's say I wanted to do a county or an ODOT district or even a political jurisdiction. I can choose that. And then I can choose, I don't know what these Senate districts are or where they're located, but I'm just going to choose one. I can add that. And then that is going to filter all my data based off of that geographic boundary. So if I reset that, I'll clear that, and then now I'll show you the drawing function. So if you wanted to draw your own shapes, let's say you were doing a corridor analysis, or you wanted to capture all of the assets that fall within a distance of the roadway, I could draw a shape here, and I could actually apply a buffer to that as well. So if I wanted to apply a buffer of, say, 500 feet to a line that I'm drawing, I can click and start drawing a line. Double click when I finish. It's going to draw that shape, apply the buffer, and filter all of the records in these layers that I have turned on based off of that shape that I drew. You can draw multiple shapes too. So let's say I wanted to include this intersection here. I could draw another shape, let's say just a circle. And as I draw more shapes, more data will start to populate as those filters change. You could also click on a shape that you drew and move that around. And once you move that, it'll adjust your filters dynamically. You can also share any of the spatial filters using that same tool that I showed you earlier, the share function. And this will share all of the spatial filters and any attribute filters that you do have applied. Again, we do have the clear filters tool that you can use to clear any filters that you've applied to your map. And now I can see all the data again. All right, so I'm going to turn these layers back off and show you a couple other tools that we have here in Create a Map. So I have my Find Log Point tool. This is a tool for anybody that has done business with ODOT. You might be familiar with the linear referencing system that we use, where we have a route ID and a series of log points to find locations along those routes. This Find Log Point tool allows you to search for those routes and search for those locations along the route. So we do have an option to choose between the county LRS and the state LRS. And LRS just stands for Linear Referencing System. Again, the county LRS, those routes are going to be unique per county. So the mileposts are going to reset when a route crosses over a county line. And then the state log point, the state LRS, is going to be continuous across the entire state. So for the county LRS, you can choose a county. You can choose a route. So these are organized a little differently than the project search page, and this is what the project search page will look like soon. But these are the nice looking route names that I mentioned. This will give you by default all of the routes within that county. But if you wanted to, you could quickly start typing and filter those down. So if I wanted Interstate 70, I could choose that route. And you can see that it's going to highlight, I'm going to minimize this just to illustrate, it's going to highlight the entire route that I've selected on the map. If I wanted to find a location along that route, I can choose a log point or a milepost. And it's going to drop a pin on that map and show me where that milepost is along that route. And then lastly, if I wanted to see just a segment of that route, so let's say I wanted to see this route between milepost 5 and 8. I can type in my end log point and it'll show me the bounds of that route between the begin and the end log point that I just added. You'll also notice that it'll show you the minimum and the maximum values for that route, and that will dynamically change depending on the route that you've selected. So to do this with the state LRS, it's a very similar process, but because they do not reset county by county, you do not have to select a county. You can just choose your route, and it'll take you to that statewide view of whatever route you chose. All right, so that is the Find Log Point tool. Also within this tool set, we do have a measure tool that you can use to make simple measurements. You can do distance measurements or area measurements. So the way you do that is you just click on the map, start drawing, and then double click when you're done. Double click when you're done. All right, it doesn't want to seem to be done. Guess I'm not clicking well enough. I blame my computer on this one. You can also toggle the units of measurement. So if I wanted to change from miles to say feet, you can choose the different units of measurement. The area works a very similar way. You start drawing, and then when you are complete, you should be able to double click. I'm wondering if there's a bug right now or if my mouse is just acting.
It does look like there is a bug, so we'll get that reported.
Yep. Thank you, Katy.
Mm-hmm.
So this will work the same way that once you complete your measurement, you can change your unit here, and you can see that change dynamically in the tool. So apologize about the bug. We will get that sorted out. And then lastly here in the tools, we have a view in Path Web and a view in Street View. Now these are very similar tools to the right-click menu, but what this does is this just allows you to enable it, click on the map. And if I clicked on the location on the roadway, it should provide a good link. Street View works the same way there. We do have a print function that you can print out the extent of your map. So if I had layers turned on, I could use this print tool to generate a PDF map. You can generate a PDF, a JPEG, a GIF, or a TIFF, all those different formats. And then we have a bookmark feature. So the bookmark feature will just bookmark an area for you. So if I add a new bookmark, and then if I browse away, these bookmarks should persist on your local machine. So you can always come back to that bookmark if you have a project area or a location that you want to come back to. Again, that share feature will give you a similar functionality, but it will also include any data or filters that you have turned on. All right, so one last thing that I want to touch on here in Create a Map is the attribute table. So you can access the attribute table for any data set. It doesn't have to be turned on, but I turn this one on just to illustrate. So if I click on attributes table, this will give me a view of all the data for that particular layer in my map. Now you can expand this to the full extent of your screen. You can also move this around a little bit to make it smaller or larger. You can collapse it completely if you want. But this tool will allow you to kind of view all of the attributes all at once. This gives you kind of a better sense of the data and lets you just view everything in like a tabular form here. Some of our data sets have, like bridges, for example, have lots and lots of attributes. So there is a feature here that you can manage the columns. So this will not turn the columns off for the layer in your map, but it will change the view of the table here. So if I wanted to turn all of these off and then select just a couple of them, I can choose this deselect all, and because there are so many in this table, it's taking a second, but then I can turn on just the fields that I want to view. And so now instead of having 200 attributes in this table, I just have 5. We also have the ability to download data or export it from this table. Now there is a restriction on this. Because this is packing up the data and exporting it real time, I believe we limit this to 1,000 features at once. So that might not be ideal for you, but we do have a new feature of this table that might help you limit that. Right above the export tool, there is a filter table by map extent. And if you turn this on, it's going to filter this table just by what I see on the map. So if I zoom out a little bit, you can see that more and more records are being added to this. This table will also reflect any filters that you have in the layer itself too. So if you are building a spatial filter and you want to export that data, you could build that spatial filter, come to the attribute table, and then export that to either a CSV, a geodatabase, a shapefile, or a KML file. But now that I have this table limited to just a handful of records, I could then export that, and that will come through and download in my browser. So also from the attribute table, you can highlight any of these records, and then you can zoom to those records, or you can clear your selection as well here too. And then back on the right-hand side, there is a link to filter the data. So this will bring you back to the filter by attributes tool, or a link to the metadata, which will take you back to the data page. All right, so that is quickly a high-level overview of Create a Map. I'm going to jump back to my home page here and walk through a couple other pages. Was there a question, Katie?
Hey, yeah, I may have missed it working on some things on the back end here, but did you go over the right-click menu?
I did. Yes, I did.
Okay, good.
All right, so I'm going to jump into the map viewer section here. So what this is these are curated versions of Create a Map that we've worked with various data owners at ODOT to curate. So for instance, instead of seeing all of the bridges in one layer that I then have to filter, we have a structures viewer here that we worked with the Office of Structures. And this has predefined filters and queries for different bridge layers. So I can view state-owned bridges, or I can view the bridges based on the operating status here. Similarly, hydraulic engineering, I can view conduits in more refined queries. I can view them by district. I can view them by general appraisal. We also, in our map viewers, we do have the ability to link to external data too. So for instance, we have live stream gauges from the USGS. We have flood hazard information from FEMA. So those are just additional services that we don't have to maintain that data, but we pull it from other agencies. So feel free to navigate these. I'm not going to go through all of them right now, but if you guys have any questions or ideas for map viewers that would help the general TIMS user, please feel free to reach out to us and we can have that conversation. All right, standard maps. So standard maps is a way to just generate a PDF map or an image of a map quickly using some predefined map types that we've curated. So the way this works is you can choose a map type. If I wanted to generate a map of, let's say, functional class, I can choose functional class. My area of interest, I can choose, if I say work for a city, I can choose city. I can choose that city name. I can choose the base map that I want. What type of format, whether it's a PDF, PNG, or JPEG. I can choose the layout, portrait or landscape, and then the size of that map. So once I click Generate Map, it's going to go out and look at that data, build a query, build a map, and then provide that map for me in my PDF output. So once that does complete, it will download in my browser. And the benefit of this is you could generate a map today and then come back tomorrow and generate a new map, and it'll have updated data. But you don't have to know how to use ArcGIS Pro or other mapping software to build that. So this is an example of what one of these standard PDF maps would look like. And then lastly, I want to touch on the data page here. So I showed you how to link to this page from Create a Map for individual data sets, but this is a repository where we have metadata for every data set that we have in Create a Map and most of the data that we have in our map viewers. So to navigate this, you can find the data set that you're interested in. You can click on the data set. And then from here, you can view all of the attributes that we have in that data set. You can see a description. You can also download the full data sets from this page. So again, we have those same formats, a CSV, file geodatabase, KML, or shapefile. This will refresh based on when the data refreshes too. So I should have mentioned in Create a Map, our data updates on various cycles depending on the data needs. So you can see that this data set that I have highlighted here updates monthly, and its last update was on the 1st of the month. Back in the overall view, you can also see here we have an update cycle, and you can see a lot of our data set updates daily, but some of it is as needed or on other cycles like quarterly or monthly. So back in the dataset details page, we have a couple other items here. So we have a link to the business owner or some more, I guess, additional helpful information about that data set. Please be advised that the ODOT website has changed recently. And so some of these links are broken at the moment, but we are working to clean those up and point to the new ODOT website. But this will take you to the external site and give you some more information about who owns this data, and maybe you might want to contact them for additional information. And then finally on this page, we have a URL. So if you are a GIS user, you're probably already familiar with these URLs, but this is the the REST endpoint for the service that we are hosting and sharing it within TIMS. So if you want to add this layer to your own map, you can view that REST endpoint there, or you can copy it directly from this data page. All right, so that is the data page. Let me jump back real quick too and show you the search. This is just a basic search, but if I wanted to search for a layer, this will search all the text in the description and the dataset name and return all the layers that might meet that search criteria. All right, so that's the data page. And then lastly, to wrap us up, I do just want to reiterate that the information and support page at the upper right-hand corner is a great place to find more resources, additional trainings. We do not have the link here yet for the September webinar, but we will add that once the registration goes live. If you want to share this with your colleagues, we'll be doing another live webinar, hopefully with less bugs, but in September. And then lastly, you can find the contact information down at the bottom. All right, with that, were there any questions in the chat that we want to address?
There haven't been any more questions. I think as you went through the content, started answering the questions that popped up initially. So
Okay.
yeah, I think that was really good. Does anyone, we have a few more minutes left. If anyone wants to post a question, we could demo that live for remaining minutes. If we want to fill a few minutes, Steve, you could maybe grab one of those REST URLs and show how you can add that to create a map.
Good call, Katie. I did gloss right over how you add data to create a map. So we do have the ability within Create a Map to add your own data, and you can share that data as well. So at the top, there is an Add Data button. So you can add a CSV, a KML, or a zip file. The zip file would be like a shape file that you can add. So to add a data set like that, you could either drag and drop it. You can click to select a file. Let's just go ahead and add location coordinates. So I'm adding a CSV that has coordinates. So I can choose lat long coordinates. I can choose which fields store my latitude and longitude. And then I can read that file and add it to my map. So now it just shows up here under my layers. So I'm not sure where this data is that I have added, but it's up here, it looks like in District 2. And as Katie mentioned, you can also add REST endpoints. So if you have your own data that you're hosting in a server or a portal environment, do I have one of those links? Let's just find a link. So I'm going to copy this URL here. And then if I come back to TIMS, I can go to add data from a URL, paste that in there. And so we do already have this data in TIMS, but just to illustrate, if I add that layer to my map, now I can see that I have added my own service. And so if I wanted to, I could then share this link, and whoever I shared that link with, or if I was using this to bookmark it, say, I could see my own data here and create a map as well. But we do support adding latitude, longitude, addresses. If you have addresses that you want to plot in TIMS, you can also add route events. So if you have data that has our route IDs and log points on them, you can add those to TIMS as well. Thanks, Katie, for mentioning that.
No problem. This has been great, Steve.
Any other questions, or we have a couple minutes left?
I will
There's
note
one.
that.
Sorry, I was going to say there is one question I've sent over to Katie in the chat. or in the question box. I don't know if you saw it.
About these shared map links.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
think I got them all. I will note that all of the bugs that we've seen during today's session now seem to be behaving perfectly in my TIMS session. So this could just be, the servers get shy or Mercury's in retrograde or who knows what. But just remember, if you ever do see issues, don't hesitate to reach out to us at the TIMS email address. We want to respond to those quickly, and if there's anything that we can do to fix the problem, we'll do so right away.
Yeah, thank you, Katy.
Okay, well, if there's no more questions, thank you both. This has been a fantastic webinar, and I did put in the chat the link to registration for the next webinar. It's on September 10th from 1 to 2 p.m. And I've dropped the link in a couple of times for the in-person sessions. So thank you again for your attendance, and please be watching your email for the follow-up certificate and also the link to the recording. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Victoria.